Someone tried to burn me alive, and the man I left 3 years ago declared war. The building was on fire. Not a small fire. Not a kitchen accident or faulty wiring. This was deliberate, gasoline-soaked, rage-fueled arson meant to burn everything I'd ever built to ash. I was inside when the first window exploded. Glass rained down like judgment. Smoke clawed its way up my throat. My lungs screamed. My knees buckled. And somewhere through the heat and chaos, I heard the crash of the front door being ripped off its hinges. Not kicked. Ripped. Then hands, strong, impossibly warm, locked around my waist and yanked me backward through the flames. I blacked out before I hit the sidewalk. Quick check-in. Where are you watching from? California? Texas? Miami? Washington? Drop it in the comments. If you're into powerful werewolf stories, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on the bell, and share this with another werewolf story lover. This is Gracie Werewolf Story Bank. Once you start, there's no escape. When I woke up in the hospital 3 hours later, the man who saved me wasn't sitting by my bedside asking if I was okay. He was standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice cold as winter. Find him. I don't care where he's hiding. Bring him to me. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about a watch anymore. This was about revenge. Power. And a bond one thought I'd escaped 3 years ago. Chapter 1. Let me rewind. 17 days before the fire, I was standing in my father's watch repair shop in downtown Atlanta, staring at a hole in the ceiling the size of a Honda Civic. The storm had been biblical. Wind, rain, hail the size of golf balls. Half the city lost power. My shop lost its roof. Water poured in. Ruined 3 display cases. Destroyed a century-old grandfather clock I'd been restoring for 6 months. Insurance? Laughable. My policy covered acts of God. Apparently, Georgia thunderstorms didn't qualify. I had $347 in my checking account. The repair estimate? $12,000. I fix watches. Vintage ones, mostly Swiss movements, German chronographs, American railroad pieces. My dad taught me the craft before he died. This shop was his dream. I wasn't going to let it drown because I couldn't afford a tarp and some drywall. The water damage was worse than it looked. The floorboards had started to warp. Mold was already creeping up the walls behind the display cases. I could smell it. That sour, musty stench that meant rot was setting in deep. Every hour I waited was another $100 I didn't have added to the bill. I called 3 contractors. 2 didn't bother calling back. The 3rd laughed when I asked about payment plans. Lady, nobody finances roof repairs. Cash up front or we don't start. I hung up before he could hear my voice crack. That night, I sat on the floor of the shop surrounded by broken glass and soggy drywall, staring at the tools my father had passed down to me. His loops. His tweezers. The tiny screwdrivers he'd labeled in his shaky handwriting the year before he died. He'd built this place from nothing. Saved for 15 years just to afford the down payment on a shop in a decent part of town. He taught me every technique he knew, how to feel the resistance in a mainspring, how to listen for the tick that meant a balance wheel was off by a fraction of a millimeter. Watches are honest, he used to say. They don't lie. They don't cheat. They just keep time. And if you respect them, they'll outlast you. I respected them. But respect doesn't pay bills. So I did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I went to the back room, opened the locked drawer, and pulled out the watch. It wasn't just any watch. It was a 1963 Patek Philippe Nautilus, white gold, engraved on the case back with a single word in cursive. Always. The weight of it in my hand felt wrong. Too heavy. Too cold. Like holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. The man who gave it to me 3 years ago didn't say much when he handed it over. Just slid it across the table at a cafe in Buckhead, right after I told him I couldn't do this anymore. His face had been unreadable. Just that calm, controlled mask he wore when he didn't want you to see what was happening underneath. So you never forget what you walked away from, he'd said quietly. Then he stood up, left a $100 bill on the table for a $12 coffee, and walked out. I hadn't seen him since. His name was Dante Cross. Like an alpha. Billionaire. Owner of half the commercial real estate between Midtown and Peachtree. Cold eyes. Warm hands. A smile that could melt steel. Or freeze you where you stood. We dated for 11 months. It was intense. Consuming. The kind of relationship where you forget your own name because his is all you hear in your head. He didn't just take up space in a room, he commanded it. People moved when he walked by. Conversations stopped. Waiters appeared out of nowhere. Doors opened before he reached them. At first, I thought it was money. Wealth creates its own gravity. But it wasn't money. It was him. Something primal. Something that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up even when he was being gentle. Even when he was holding you like you were made of glass. We met at an estate sale in Marietta. I was bidding on a lot of vintage pocket watches. He was bidding on the entire estate. We ended up in a bidding war over a 1902 Waltham Vanguard Railroad watch. I won. He found me in the parking lot afterward, leaning against my car with that slight smirk that made my stomach flip. You outbid me. I did. Nobody outbids me. I just did. He laughed, handed me his card. Dinner. Tomorrow. I'll let you gloat. I should have said no. I didn't. 11 months later, I learned what he really was. We were at his penthouse. Late. I'd been working on a restoration project at his place. He collected antique clocks the way some people collected cars. I was on my third glass of wine, laughing at something he'd said, when he went quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the room feel smaller. There's something you need to know about me, he said. I set down my glass. Okay. I'm not entirely human. I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. I'm Likan. Werewolf. Shapeshifter. Whatever term makes it easier for you to process. I shift during the full moon. My pack answers to me. And you, he looked at me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. You're my mate. I laughed. Nervous. Confused. He didn't. You're serious. I don't joke about this. I stood up. Grabbed my bag. I need to go. Mercy. No. I need to think. I need space. I need time. I'll give you time. But time didn't help. Because the more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. Not of him. Of what being with him meant. Mates weren't boyfriends. They weren't temporary. They were permanent. Bonded. Claimed. And I'd spent my whole life fighting to stay free. So I left. Blocked his number. Moved apartments. Kept the watch because throwing it away felt like admitting he still had a piece of me. Now, standing in my ruined shop with rain dripping through the ceiling, I realized that piece was worth 12 grand. Maybe more. So I drove to Lucky's Pawn on Memorial Drive, walked up to the counter, and slid the watch across the glass. The guy behind the counter was mid-50s, balding, with the kind of suspicious squint you develop after years of people trying to pawn stolen goods. He picked up the watch. Turned it over. Saw the engraving. Whistled low. Lady, this is serious hardware. Patek Philippe. White gold. Original papers? No papers. Doesn't matter. This is still worth serious money. You sure you want to sell? My throat felt tight. I'm sure. He studied me for a long moment. You look like you're about to cry. I'm not. Give me a day to authenticate it. Come back tomorrow. I'll have a number for you. I nodded. Walked out before he could see my hands shaking. I left the shop feeling lighter. Freer. That freedom lasted exactly 19 hours. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 7:43 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, curiosity, dread, made me swipe. Hello. Silence. Then a voice. Low. You sold something that doesn't belong to you. My blood went cold. Dante. How did you come to the penthouse? Now. I'm not. Mercy. Now. He hung up. I stared at my phone, heart hammering. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he already knew. Chapter 2. I didn't respond. I went straight to the pawn shop. Memorial Drive was quiet that early. The sun hadn't fully burned off the morning haze yet. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept replaying his words in my head, trying to figure out how he'd found out so fast. The pawn shop guy said he needed a day to authenticate. That meant Dante had been watching, waiting, or worse, he had people everywhere, eyes I couldn't see, reporting back every move I made. The thought made my skin crawl. I parked outside Lucky's and pushed through the door hard enough to make the bell above it scream. The same guy was behind the counter, but this time he wouldn't look me in the eye. That's when I knew. "Where's the watch?" I asked. He shifted his weight, scratched the back of his neck. "Sold."
"What?"
"You said you needed a day to authenticate. Someone came in last night, right before closing. Paid cash. Way over asking. I couldn't say no." My chest tightened.
"Who?"
He didn't answer. Just slid a business card across the counter like it was contaminated. Cross Holdings LLC. My stomach dropped. The card was heavy, embossed, expensive. The kind of thing that screamed power and money and untouchable. "He bought it back," I said slowly. The guy nodded. Still wouldn't meet my eyes. "How much did he pay you?" "Double what it's worth." "And you didn't think to call me first?" "Lady, when a guy like that walks in and puts 30 grand cash on the counter, you don't ask questions. You take the money and say thank you for a watch worth maybe 15. Dante didn't just buy back the watch. He sent a message. I left the pawn shop feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. Everything felt wrong, off balance. Like I'd just lost a game I didn't know I was playing. But it got worse. 3 days later, my landlord called. I was elbow deep in a pocket watch repair when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer. But the name on the screen made me pause. "Mercy, it's Jean." Jean owned the building my shop sat in. 67 years old. Brooklyn transplant. Gruff but fair. He'd known my dad. Let me take over the lease when Dad died, without jacking up the rent. "Hey, Jean. What's up? I need to talk to you about your lease." My stomach clenched. "Is this about last month's rent? Because I can have it to you by Friday."
"It's not about that."
"Your lease got purchased." I froze. Purchased. New owner bought the building. And the one next to it. And the two across the street. Whole block, actually. Sale went through yesterday. My mouth went dry. Who bought it? Some corporation. Cross Holdings LLC. The room tilted. "You've got 60 days to vacate or renegotiate terms with a new owner." "Renegotiate with who?" "Cross Holdings. They'll be reaching out." I hung up before he finished talking. Dante didn't just buy back the watch. He bought the pawn shop. And then, because apparently pettiness runs deep in alpha veins, he bought the entire block the pawn shop sat on. 4 buildings. 12 businesses. All acquired in a single night through a shell corporation, so clean the ink was still wet. He didn't just want the watch. He wanted control. Over my lease. My livelihood. My ability to say no. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at nothing, feeling my pulse hammer in my ears. Then I grabbed my keys. I drove straight to Cross Tower, the gleaming glass monolith in Midtown where Dante ran his empire. 45 stories of steel and tinted windows that reflected the sky so perfectly you couldn't tell where the building ended and the clouds began. I'd been there once before. Back when we were together. He'd brought me up to his office to show me a rare clock he'd acquired at auction. I remembered the view, the silence, the way everything felt removed from the real world, like standing inside a snow globe. Now, pulling into the parking garage, all I felt was anger. I rode the elevator to the lobby. Marble floors. Waterfall feature along one wall. Security desk manned by 2 guys in suits who looked like they bench press trucks for fun. I walked straight up to them. "I need to see Dante Cross." The older one, shaved head, neck like a tree trunk, didn't even blink. "Do you have an appointment?"
"No."
"Then you can't go up. Tell him Mercy Jones is here." "Ma'am, Mr. Cross doesn't take unscheduled meetings." "He'll take this one." The guy's expression didn't change. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I stepped closer, lowered my voice. made sure every word landed hard. If you don't let me up, I'm going to start screaming about wage theft and workplace harassment until someone calls the press. And then I'm going to tell them Dante Cross uses shell corporations to intimidate women who won't sleep with him anymore. That got his attention.
His jaw tightened.
He glanced at his partner, then picked up the phone.
Yeah.
I've got a Mercy Jones in the lobby. She's insisting.
Pause.
His eyes flicked to me. Understood. He hung up, gestured toward the elevators. 42nd floor. He's expecting you. I didn't say thank you. I walked to the elevator, stepped inside, and watched the doors close. My reflection stared back at me in the polished steel. I looked tired, angry,
Small.
but I wasn't backing down. The elevator climbed. My stomach dropped. The floor numbers ticked higher. 35, 38,
40.
The doors opened, and I stepped into Dante Cross's world. Chapter 3. Dante's office was on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Furniture that cost more than my car. A desk made of black walnut, so polished I could see my reflection in it. He was standing by the window when I walked in, hands in his pockets, suit tailored so perfectly it looked painted on. He didn't turn around. The silence stretched. Heavy. Deliberate. Like he was making me wait on purpose, reminding me that this was his territory, his rules, his game. My nails dug into my palms. You sold my watch. Not a question. A statement.
Flat. Cold.
It was mine to sell.
No.
He turned then, and those eyes, steel gray, unreadable, locked onto me like a scope zeroing in. It was a gift. Gifts have meaning, Mercy. You don't pawn meaning. I needed the money. You needed help. There's a difference. Heat flushed up my neck. I don't want your help. Too bad. He walked to his desk, opened a leather folder, and slid a contract across the surface. You owe me. I didn't touch it.
Didn't even look at it.
Owe you what? Sentimental value. That watch belonged to my grandfather. It's irreplaceable, since you can't give it back. You literally bought it back. You're going to work off the debt. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound came out sharp and bitter, echoing off the glass and steel around us. You're joking. I don't joke about business. This isn't business. This is revenge. His expression didn't change. Didn't flicker. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. What kind of work? He gestured to the far wall, floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with antique clocks.
Dozens of them.
All broken. Hands frozen. Faces cracked. Some missing pieces. Others covered in dust so thick it looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Restore them. Every single one. Do it here in my penthouse. I'll provide tools, materials, workspace. You'll start Monday. I stared at the clocks. Then at him. You're insane. You need money. I need a horologist. This is mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial would be you paying me a fair wage and leaving my lease alone. Where's the fun in that? My hands clenched into fists. And if I say no? Then I evict you in 60 days, and you lose the shop your father spent 30 years building. Checkmate. The word hit me like a fist to the gut. He'd thought this through. Every angle. Every exit. He knew exactly what leverage to use and how hard to press. This wasn't spontaneous. This was calculated. Strategic. This was an alpha move. I wanted to scream.
To throw something.
To tell him exactly where he could shove his contract and his clocks and his stupid dominance games. But I didn't. Because he was right. I couldn't afford to lose the shop. It was all I had left of my father. All I had left of the life I'd built for myself. Without it, I was nothing. Just another broke 30-year-old in a city that chewed people up and spit them out daily.
Dante watched me.
Waiting. He didn't rush. Didn't push. Just stood there with that maddening calm, like he already knew what I was going to do. How long? I asked. As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. I stepped closer to the desk, looked down at the contract. It was thick. Professional. printed on expensive paper with letterhead that probably cost more per page than I made in a day. I didn't read it. My vision was blurring at the edges, my throat tight with something that felt dangerously close to tears. I grabbed the pen. My hand shook. Dante noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. I looked up. "Yes, I do. There are other options. Name one that doesn't end with me losing everything." He said nothing. I signed my name. Fast. Before I could change my mind. The ink felt permanent. Final. Like I'd just signed something way more binding than a work contract. Dante picked up the paper, glanced at my signature, then folded it carefully and slid it back into the leather folder. "Good," he said quietly. "See you Monday." I turned to leave. "Mercy." I stopped. Didn't turn around. 8 a.m. Don't be late. I walked out without responding. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. My reflection stared back at me in the polished doors. I looked pale, shaken, like I'd just survived something I didn't fully understand yet. When the doors opened in the lobby, I walked past security without looking at them, got in my car, sat there for 10 minutes with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I'd just agreed to work for Dante Cross, in his penthouse,
Alone.
for an unspecified amount of time. The same man I'd run from 3 years ago because being near him made me feel like I was losing myself, like I was being pulled into something so big and overwhelming that I'd disappear completely. And now I'd just signed a contract that put me right back in his orbit. I drove home on autopilot,
Parked.
climbed the stairs to my apartment, unlocked the door, stood in the middle of my tiny living room and tried to process what I'd just done. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't look, but I did. Wear something comfortable. The work is delicate.
Dante.
I threw my phone onto the couch and pressed my palms against my eyes.
Monday.
3 days. I had 3 days to prepare myself to walk back into Dante Cross's life. And I had no idea if I was strong enough to walk back out. That weekend, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. His voice. His eyes. The way he'd looked at me like he could see straight through every defense I'd built. "You needed help. There's a difference." He wasn't wrong. I did need help. But accepting help from Dante felt like opening a door I'd spent 3 years keeping locked. Sunday night, I laid out my clothes.
Jeans.
T-shirt. Work boots. Nothing fancy.
Nothing that said I was trying.
Because I wasn't. This was business. Just business. I repeated that to myself until I almost believed it. Monday morning, I woke up at 6, showered, drank coffee that tasted like dust, stared at myself in the mirror, and tried to convince myself I could do this. At 7:45, I pulled into the parking garage beneath Cross Tower. At 7:58, I stepped into the elevator. At 8:00 exactly, the doors opened onto the 42nd floor. Dante was waiting, leaning against the wall beside the elevator, arms crossed, dressed in black slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked at me, didn't smile. "Right on time." "I'm not late."
No.
"You're not." He pushed off the wall and started walking. I followed. We passed his office.
Kept going.
Stopped at a private elevator at the end of the hall. He pressed his thumb to a scanner. The doors opened. "This goes to my penthouse." I hesitated. He stepped inside, held the door. "You signed the contract, Mercy. Time to honor it." I stepped inside.
The doors closed.
And just like that, I was trapped. Okay, real talk, if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed, that's suspicious. This is the kind of story you binge, not sample. So hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell us what country you're watching from in the comments. We see every single one. Chapter 4. The penthouse wasn't a home. It was a power play disguised as architecture. 38th floor. Windows that swallowed the city whole. Marble so cold it burned through my shoes. And there, tucked in the corner like a taunt, a workbench. Custom built. stocked with every tool I'd ever touched, dreamed of, or whispered about in the dark corners of horological forums at 3 a.m. Loops that cost more than my rent. Swiss screwdrivers I'd only seen in catalogs. Movement holders so precise they could cradle a heartbeat. He'd studied me, cataloged my needs, built me a cage lined with everything I wanted. I hated him for knowing me that well. First week, I played invisible. Head down, hands steady. 8 to 6, clockwork routine. Good morning. See you tomorrow. Words like walls. He didn't push. Left for work in tailored suits that probably cost what I made in 3 months. Came back around 5, loosened his tie, sat at that obscene kitchen island with his laptop. Pretended he was focused on spreadsheets or whatever billionaires do when they're not ruining lives. But I felt him. Every time I adjusted a balance wheel, every time I bent close to examine a jewel bearing, his attention pressed against my spine like a hand. Not touching. Just there. Waiting. The second week, he stopped pretending to be subtle. I came down one morning, still dark, frost on the windows, and found my car outside. My pathetic, wheezing, duct-tape disaster that I'd named Lazarus because it kept dying and rising. New battery. 4 brand new tires. The kind that don't skid on black ice. I stormed back inside. Found him at the espresso machine, perfectly calm. I didn't ask you to fix my car. Your battery was dead. So you would have been late. He didn't even look up. I don't like waiting. I don't like charity. Finally, his eyes met mine.
Dark. Steady.
Good. Then pay me back in clockwork. My mouth opened.
Closed.
I wanted to throw something. Wanted to tell him exactly where he could shove his casual invasions of my life. But my car did start smoother that morning, and I was already 10 minutes behind. I swallowed the argument. Tasted metal. Week 3, he escalated. I opened my fridge at home, that sad little box full of condiments and shame, and found it transformed. Fresh vegetables, still damp from the market. Real butter, the kind that comes in gold foil. Coffee beans, so expensive they came in a sealed bag with a roasting date. No note, no text. Just evidence of his reach. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking. Stop. 3 dots appeared immediately. Like he'd been waiting. Stop what? You know what? I don't accept malnutrition as a payment method.
Eat.
I stared at those words until they blurred. Wanted to scream. Wanted to throw the phone, the food, everything back in his perfect face. But my stomach was empty, and my hands were tired, and something in my chest cracked just enough to let fury leak into something more dangerous. He was taking care of me, and I was letting him. The workbench became my refuge and my prison. Hours disappeared into brass gears and jeweled movements. I could lose myself there, forget that every tool I touched was his, that every moment of peace came with strings attached. But at 5 o'clock, like clockwork, ironic that he'd return. Kitchen island.
Laptop.
That invisible pressure. Sometimes he'd ask questions. Small ones. How was the movement? Did I need different oil? Was the lighting sufficient? I'd answer in syllables.
Yes. No. Fine. But he was learning me.
Cataloging my rhythms the way I cataloged watch movements. When I got frustrated, when I needed coffee, when my shoulders tensed because I'd been bent over the bench too long. And slowly, so slowly, I didn't notice until it was too late, I started learning him too. The way he rubbed his jaw when he was thinking. How he took his coffee black, no sugar, like punishment. The slight softening around his eyes when I got a particularly stubborn movement to tick back to life. I was supposed to hate him. I did hate him. But somewhere between the new tires and the stocked fridge and the perfect workbench, hate started feeling like the wrong word for this slow-burning thing growing between my ribs. Story 5. I had a boyfriend. Past tense felt more honest, even before everything imploded. Trevor Kane. Investment broker. Wharton pedigree, he mentioned in every conversation like a verbal tick. 6'2" of manufactured confidence wrapped in Tom Ford and entitlement. Sandy blonde hair. He spent more time on than I spent on entire clocks. Veneers so aggressively white they belonged in a toothpaste commercial, not a human mouth. 8 months. 243 days of fine. Not good. Not even particularly pleasant.
Just fine.
The relationship equivalent of beige wallpaper. Inoffensive. Forgettable. There. He remembered my birthday if his phone reminded him. Took me to restaurants with names I couldn't pronounce, then made pointed comments about splitting checks while drinking $60 bourbon. Said I love you exactly twice, both times right before asking me to abandon work for impromptu lunch dates that always ran long enough to make me miss afternoon appointments. But he was safe. Human. Normal. He didn't own buildings or hire private investigators or stock my fridge like some kind of territorial wolf leaving kills at my door. Everything Dante wasn't. I'd kept them separate. Told Trevor I was doing freelance restoration for a private collector, kept details skeletal. He never asked for more. Too busy talking about market fluctuations and his gym routine. That worked until he decided surprises were romantic. I was wrist-deep in a 1920s French carriage clock, hand steady on a hairspring thinner than thought, when the elevator chimed.
Wrong.
All wrong. Dante never came home this early. I looked up. Trevor stepped out, holding flowers, grocery store carnations, still wearing the price sticker, and froze. His eyes tracked from the marble floors to the wall of windows to the kitchen where Dante stood, sleeves rolled to his elbows, making espresso like he was conducting surgery. This is your client? I set down my tools too fast. The hairspring trembled. Trevor. You're working in some dude's apartment? His voice climbed an octave. It's a penthouse. Same thing. He turned on Dante, shoulders squaring like he was about to defend territory he'd never bothered to claim. And you are? Dante didn't pause. Didn't even glance up. Just kept pulling his shot with the same focus I used on balance wheels. The landlord. Landlord. Trevor made it sound obscene. I own the building. Dante finally looked at him. Not up. They were the same height, but something in Dante's stillness made Trevor seem smaller.
And the block.
And the company that manages her shop lease downtown. Anything else you need clarification on, or should I pull up property records? Trevor's jaw went rigid. A vein appeared at his temple. I moved between them. Trevor. Outside. Now.
No.
He didn't look at me. Kept his eyes locked on Dante like this was some kind of primal standoff. I want to know why you didn't tell me about this. Because it's work. Work doesn't look like this. He gestured at the penthouse, at Dante, at the workbench that probably cost more than Trevor's Porsche. Work doesn't look like you're playing house with some older guy who's clearly careful. Dante's voice dropped. Not louder, quieter, but it hit like a physical thing, like pressure changing before a storm. Choose your next words very carefully. Trevor took a step forward. His hands were shaking. Who the hell do you think you are? Dante set down his espresso cup. The clink of porcelain on marble sounded like a bell. Someone who respects her work. You should try it. Something snapped behind Trevor's eyes. He grabbed my arm, not hard, but possessive, fingers digging into the soft space above my elbow. We're leaving. I yanked free so fast my shoulder popped.
No.
You're leaving. He stared at me like I'd started speaking Sanskrit. Are you serious right now? You don't get to show up uninvited and make demands. My voice was steady, colder than I knew I could make it. You don't get to grab me. You don't get to act like I'm some asset you need to manage. I'm your boyfriend. Then act like it. Boyfriends don't show ownership. They show trust. His face went through several expressions. Confusion, anger, something that might have been hurt if I thought he was capable of it. He pointed at Dante, without looking at him. This isn't over. Dante smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Didn't even try.
Yes.
It is. Trevor looked at me one more time, waiting for me to follow, to apologize, to shrink back into whatever shape he needed me to be. I stayed exactly where I was. He left. Flowers abandoned on the entry table, already wilting. The elevator doors closed. Silence filled the space, like water rushing into a sinking ship. I stood there, arms still burning where Trevor had grabbed it, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My hands started shaking, delayed reaction, adrenaline crash. Dante moved.
Not toward me.
Toward the espresso machine. You're trembling. He made another espresso, brought it to me, set it down without a word. I wrapped both hands around the cup, let the heat ground me. You didn't have to.
Yes.
I did. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He put his hands on you. Barely. Once is enough. I looked up at him. His jaw was tight, eyes darker than usual, something moving behind them I couldn't name. You were ready to throw him out the window. I was considering it. Dante.
What?
He said it so simply, like violence was just another option on a menu. He disrespected you. In your workspace. While you were working. Then he touched you like you were property. And you're different? The words came out sharper than I meant. You don't treat me like property? He went very still. Is that what you think? You fixed my car without asking. Stocked my fridge. Built me a workbench. You're managing my life. I'm taking care of you. His voice was quiet. Dangerous. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He pushed off the counter, came closer. Not crowding. Just present. Because you can tell me to stop.
Right now.
Say the word and I'll pull back. I'll be nothing but professional. I'll treat this like a business transaction and nothing more. My throat went tight. What if I want you to stop? Then I stop. Just like that. Just like that. We stared at each other. The espresso went cold in my hands. I should have told him to stop. Should have drawn boundaries, protected myself, kept this simple. Instead, I said, he's not coming back.
Good.
I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not asking you to. I set down the cup.
Stood.
My legs felt unsteady. I need to finish the clock. Dante stepped back. Gave me space. Then finish it. I went back to my workbench. Picked up my tools. Found the hairspring exactly where I'd left it. Behind me, Dante returned to his laptop. But the air between us had changed. Thickened. Became something we both pretended not to notice while being completely, devastatingly aware. Trevor was gone. And I didn't miss him at all. Chapter 6. 2 weeks of silence from Trevor, then the text arrived at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. Charity Gala Saturday. Black tie. Pick you up at 7. Not a question. Not an apology. Just an assumption I'd show up like nothing had happened. I should have said no. I wore a dress I'd borrowed from a coworker. Black. Simple. Hem slightly too long. Shoes that pinched my toes within 10 minutes. Makeup I didn't know how to apply properly, so I looked like I was trying too hard and failing. Trevor picked me up in the Porsche. Didn't mention the penthouse incident. Didn't mention Dante. Just talked about the guest list, who mattered, who didn't, who he needed to impress. I was an accessory. Something to wear on his arm between the watch and the cufflinks. The Ritz-Carlton in Buckingham. Chandeliers dripping crystal. Marble floors polished to mirrors. Atlanta's elite in their natural habitat. Old money pretending to care about new causes, new money buying their way into old circles. Trevor barely looked at me after we arrived. He worked the room like a shark cruising a reef. Handshakes. Laughter that came from his throat, not his chest. That particular smile men use when they're calculating net worth behind their teeth. He introduced me 3 times. This is my girl. Never my name. Never Mercy. Just my girl, like I was a possession he'd brought to show ownership. I smiled. Nodded. Played the part because I didn't know what else to do in a room full of people who cost more than my entire shop. Then Trevor disappeared. Not subtly. Just drifted toward the hallway outside the ballroom. Phone in hand. That particular purposeful stride that meant he didn't want company. I waited 15 minutes.
20.
My feet hurt. My dress felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I went looking for him. Found him in the hallway outside the bathrooms, half hidden by a marble column. Pressed against a brunette in a gold dress that probably cost more than my car. his hand sliding down her waist, fingers splayed possessive over her hip. Her lips on his neck, leaving a mark he'd have to cover with foundation tomorrow. They hadn't even bothered finding somewhere private. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't make a scene. I walked up, heels clicking on marble, each step perfectly measured, and tapped his shoulder. We're done. Trevor spun around, eyes wide, mouth open, lipstick smeared on his collar. Mercy. I said we're done. Don't call. Don't text. Delete my number. We're finished. The brunette smirked. Didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Trevor grabbed my wrist, tighter than last time, fingers digging into bone. You're overreacting. Let go.
No.
You're embarrassing me in front of. A hand closed around Trevor's wrist. Larger.
Stronger.
Absolutely immovable. She said, let go.
Dante.
He materialized like smoke condensing into something solid. Black suit, no tie, top 2 buttons undone like he'd gotten dressed in a hurry or didn't care about rules. Hair slightly disheveled. Eyes locked on Trevor's hand around my wrist with the kind of focus predators use before they strike. Trevor released me, but didn't back down. Puffed his chest out again, that same territorial display that worked on exactly no one. Of course you're here. Couldn't let her out of your sight. Dante didn't answer, just positioned himself slightly between us, body angled like a shield I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. Trevor's face twisted. You think you're better than me? Dante's expression didn't change. Flat.
Cold.
But something happened in his eyes, just for half a second, so fast I almost missed it. Gold bled through the gray. Metallic. Inhuman. Gone before I could blink. I don't think. I know. Trevor shoved him. 2 hands against Dante's chest, putting his full weight behind it. Dante didn't move.
Didn't even sway.
Just stood there like Trevor had pushed a mountain and smiled. Not friendly. Not amused. That smile sharks give right before they bite. Go ahead. Try again. Please. Something in his voice made Trevor step back. Made the brunette finally look uncomfortable. Made the air itself feel thinner, harder to breathe. Trevor opened his mouth, probably to say something else stupid, when security rounded the corner. 2 men in black suits, earpieces, the kind of blank professional faces that meant they'd seen everything and cared about nothing. Sir, we're going to need you to leave. Trevor pointed at Dante. He threatened me. We have cameras, sir. We saw you put hands on the lady first. Let's not make this difficult. Trevor looked at me, then at Dante, then at the security guards who were definitely not asking anymore. This is nonsense. You know who I am? My firm manages. Sir. Trevor left, shouting the whole way.
Threats.
Slurs. My name spat like a curse. The brunette followed, heels clicking, gold dress catching light like a fish scale. I stood there in the marble hallway, borrowed dress, bleeding feet, watching 8 months dissolve into nothing but noise. Not sad. Not hurt. Just empty. And furious. Furious at Trevor for being exactly who he'd always been while I pretended he was better. Furious at myself for wasting time on fine when I deserved good. Furious at the dress, the shoes, the entire night. Dante handed me his jacket. Didn't drape it over my shoulders or do anything gallant. Just held it out. Let's go. I don't need. I know. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. But you're cold. And you're angry. And if we stay here, you're going to do something you'll regret. He wasn't wrong. My hands were shaking. Had been since I'd tapped Trevor's shoulder. Adrenaline finally catching up, making my fingers tremble like I was coming down from a fight. I took the jacket. Heavy. Expensive. Still warm from his body. We left through a side exit.
No goodbyes. No explanations. Just gone.
His car was waiting, black, sleek, something German with an engine that purred like a threat. He opened the passenger door.
Didn't say anything. Didn't need to.
I got in. The leather was soft. The interior smelled like cedar and something darker, wilder. Not cologne. Just him. Dante slid behind the wheel, started the engine, didn't ask where I wanted to go, just drove. We left Buckingham behind, left the Ritz and its chandeliers and its people who cost too much. Drove through Atlanta's heart, streetlights painting everything gold and shadow. I watched the city blur past, let the anger settle into something heavier. Something that felt less like fury and more like grief. Not for Trevor. For the time I'd wasted pretending we were something we weren't. You knew. My voice sounded strange, distant. Dante kept his eyes on the road. Knew what? That he'd do this. That he was... I couldn't say it. Cheater felt too small. You knew. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?
No.
I wouldn't have. Would have thought he was manipulating me, isolating me, playing some kind of game. I should have known. You were busy surviving.
He glanced at me. Just for a second.
People like him bank on that. They find someone strong enough to be interesting, tired enough to be convenient, and they take until there's nothing left. My throat went tight. I'm not a victim. I never said you were. His hands tightened on the wheel. You ended it. Walked up and ended it without flinching. That's not victim behavior. That's someone who knows their worth. Something cracked in my chest. Not breaking. Opening. I pulled his jacket tighter around my shoulders and watched Atlanta disappear behind us, heading somewhere I didn't recognize, with someone I shouldn't trust but couldn't seem to push away. Chapter 7. Trevor didn't understand the word no.
First came the texts. Dozens. Hundreds, maybe.
Apologies that read like templates copied from some How to Win Her Back forum. Promises to change wrapped in manipulation, so transparent I could see through them like glass. I'm sorry, baby. I wasn't thinking. She meant nothing. You're overreacting. It was just a kiss. I love you. Don't throw us away over one mistake. I deleted them without responding. Blocked his number. He got a new one. Then came voicemails. His voice shifting through stages like grief, bargaining, anger, denial, more anger. Some sober. Most not. Words slurring together, rage bleeding through the gaps. You think you're better than me now? With your rich boyfriend? Nobody's gonna want you, Mercy. You're damaged goods. I made you. Everything you have, I gave you.
Lies.
Delusion. Desperation dressed up as threats. I blocked that number too. He showed up at the shop on a Tuesday night. 11 p.m. I was closing up, counting the till, when I heard it. Pounding. Fists on glass like he was trying to break through with force of will alone. Mercy. Open the door. I froze behind the counter. Lights still on. Nowhere to hide. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just watched through the front window as he swayed on the sidewalk, drunk enough that standing straight required active concentration. You embarrassed me. His voice cracked. High and wounded and furious. In front of everyone. Made me look like a fool. I pulled out my phone. Fingers shaking. Should have called the police. Called Dante instead. He's at the shop. Don't open the door. Not a question. A command. I'm coming. Trevor kicked the glass.
Once. Twice.
A spiderweb crack appeared, spreading like frost. You think you're special? You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. A window opened above the shop. Mrs. Chun, my upstairs neighbor, leaning out of her bathrobe. I'm calling the cops. Mind your business, lady. I already dialing. Trevor kicked again. The crack widened. He was going to break through. Then headlights swept across the street. Dante's car, moving too fast, braking too hard, door opening before the engine even stopped. He crossed the sidewalk in 4 strides. Grabbed Trevor by the collar. Not gentle. Not careful. Just yanked him backward like he weighed nothing. Slammed him against a parking meter hard enough that metal rang. She said no. Trevor struggled. Useless. Like a fish on a hook. Get off me. Dante leaned in close. His voice dropped so low, I barely heard it through the cracked glass, but I felt it. In my bones. In the air itself. Touch her again, and I'll erase you. Not hurt, not scare.
Erase.
You'll disappear so completely, even your mother won't remember your name. Do you understand? Trevor went pale. Something in Dante's eyes, that gold bleeding through again, brighter this time, sustained, made him stop fighting. I said, do you understand? Trevor nodded. Frantic. Terrified. Dante released him. Let him crumple to the sidewalk like garbage. Run. Trevor ran. Stumbled down the street, tripping over his own feet, disappearing into darkness. I stood behind the counter, heart hammering, watching Dante inspect the cracked glass like he was cataloging damage for insurance purposes. He turned, looked at me through the window. You okay? I nodded. Didn't trust my voice. I'm having this replaced tomorrow. And installing security cameras. And… Dante. He stopped. Thank you. Something softened in his expression. Just for a moment. Then it hardened again, jaw tight, hands curling into fists. He won't come back. I believed him. Should have known better. 3 nights later, I was at the shop past midnight.
Stupid.
Reckless. But I'd promised Mr. Hashimoto I'd finish his pocket watch restoration by Friday, and I was running behind. The shop was quiet. Just me and the clocks.
Ticking.
Breathing.
Alive.
I was adjusting a balance spring, delicate work, hands steady, everything else forgotten, when I smelled it.
Gasoline.
Sharp.
Chemical. Wrong.
I looked up. The lights went out. All of them. Simultaneously. Not a blown fuse. Someone cut the power. Then the front window exploded. Glass everywhere. Shards flying like shrapnel. And behind it flames. Roaring. Immediate. Too fast to be natural. Someone had thrown something. A bottle. Accelerant. Fire spread across the floor, climbing walls, devouring everything. The heat hit me like a physical force, sucking oxygen from the room. I ran for the back exit. Muscle memory. Emergency plan I'd rehearsed, but never needed. Grabbed the handle.
Locked.
From the outside. I yanked. Slammed my shoulder against it. Nothing. Someone had chained it shut. This wasn't random. This was planned. Smoke poured through the shop.
Thick.
Black.
Toxic.
My eyes burned. Tears streaming, throat closing, lungs screaming for air that wasn't there. I dropped to the floor. Crawled toward the front. But the flames were there. Everywhere. No path through. Workbench burning. Tools melting.
Clocks dying.
Everything I'd built dissolving into ash. My vision blurred. Edges going dark. Body getting heavy. This was it. This was how I died. Alone in my shop. Surrounded by broken time. Then hands.
Warm.
Strong. Real. Grabbed me under the arms. Pulled me backward. Away from the flames. I couldn't see.
Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think.
Just felt myself being lifted.
Carried.
Moving fast through smoke and heat. Cold air hit my face. Sudden. Shocking. Outside. Sidewalk rough against my back. Lungs convulsing, trying to remember how to work. Coughing so hard I thought I'd break ribs. Someone rolled me onto my side. Hand between my shoulder blades. Steady pressure.
Breathe.
Just breathe. Dante's voice. Low. Controlled. But underneath something else. Something barely leashed. I coughed.
Gasped.
Sucked in air that tasted like freedom and smoke. Sirens in the distance. Getting closer. I tried to sit up. Hands pushed me back down. Don't move. Ambulance is coming. My vision cleared. Slowly. Shapes becoming solid. Dante kneeling beside me. Soot on his face. Ash in his hair. Eyes blazing, not metaphorically this time. Actually glowing. Gold so bright it looked like molten metal poured into his skull. Behind him, my shop burned. Flames punching through the roof. Everything I'd worked for becoming smoke. I tried to speak. Throat raw. Voice gone. Dante's phone buzzed. He answered without looking away from me. Talk. A voice on the other end. Male. Efficient. I couldn't hear words, just tone. Dante's expression went flat. Empty. Dangerous. Address? More words. Bring him to me. Alive. Breathing. But make sure he knows what's coming. He ended the call. Looked at me with eyes that were still glowing, still inhuman, still somehow the safest thing I'd ever seen. They found him. My throat wouldn't work. I mouthed the word. Who?
Trevor.
He's at a bar 3 blocks away, bragging about teaching you a lesson. The world tilted. Not from smoke inhalation. From rage so pure it burned hotter than the fire still consuming my life's work. Dante's hand found mine. Squeezed once. I'm going to ask you a question. And I need you to be honest. I nodded. Do you want him to face the law? His voice dropped. Became something else. Something ancient and terrible and absolutely certain. Or, do you want him to face me? Ambulance lights painted everything red and blue. Firefighters shouting. Water hissing against flames. I looked at my shop. At the smoke. At the end of everything I'd built. Then at Dante. At those golden eyes that promised things the law never could. I squeezed his hand back. Gave him my answer, without words. He smiled. And the world went dark. If you're still watching, drop a comment right now. Tell us where you're from and whether you think Trevor deserves what's coming to him. And if you're not subscribed yet, honestly, what's stopping you?
Hit that button.
You'll regret it if you miss what happens next.
Chapter 8.
I woke up drowning in white. White walls. White sheets. White noise from machines that beeped like metronomes counting down to nothing. 4 taped to my arm, pulling at skin when I moved. Throat raw like I'd swallowed glass. Lungs aching with every breath. Hospital. I was in a hospital. Dante stood by the window, silhouetted against morning light, phone pressed to his ear like a weapon. Don't care if he's hiding in his mother's basement or a church confessional. Bring him to me.
Now.
His voice was ice. Controlled. But underneath, something feral prowling just beneath the surface. He turned. Saw me awake. For half a second, the mask dropped. Relief crashed across his face, raw, desperate, human, before he locked it away again behind that infuriating calm. You're okay. My voice came out sandpaper and smoke. Am I? He crossed the room in 3 strides. Sat on the edge of the bed. Didn't touch me. Just close enough that I could feel his heat. Your lungs are clear. No permanent damage. Minor burns on your hands. You'll heal. My shop. Gone. Flat. Final. Trevor doused the back exit in gasoline, chained it shut from outside, then threw a Molotov through the front window. He locked you inside and lit it. The words hit like physical blows. Each one landing somewhere vital. Everything.
Gone.
My workbench. My tools. The clocks I'd been restoring. Mr. Hashimoto's pocket watch, a family heirloom spanning 4 generations, now ash. My throat closed. Not from smoke this time. Did you? I couldn't finish. Couldn't ask what I needed to know. I got there in time. His hand hovered near mine. Not touching. Offering. That's all that matters. Where is he? Dante's jaw went rigid. Muscle jumping beneath skin. Being handled. Handled how? Do you really want to know? I looked at him. At eyes that had bled gold in the darkness. At hands that had carried me through fire. At the careful distance he maintained even now. Giving me space to choose.
No.
I didn't want to know. The doctors kept me overnight. Observation. Smoke inhalation protocol. Lucky to be alive, they kept saying. Like luck had anything to do with it. Dante stayed. Didn't leave for coffee. Didn't step out for calls. Just occupied that chair by the window like he'd been built into it, watching me with the intensity of someone memorizing details in case they disappeared. Every time I woke, groggy, disoriented, reaching for consciousness through layers of exhaustion, he was there. When they discharged me the next morning, he drove me straight to the penthouse. You're staying here. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered in that tone that expected compliance. I have my own place. Your place has one lock and windows that open from outside. It doesn't have security. Or fireproofing. He pulled into the underground garage, kill the engine. Or me. I was too tired to argue. Too empty to fight. Just nodded and let him guide me upstairs. The penthouse felt different now. Less like a fortress. More like sanctuary. He set me up in the guest room. Fresh sheets. New toothbrush. Clothes in my size already hanging in the closet. When had he done that?
Rest.
I'll be in my office if you need anything. He left before I could thank him. Over the next week, I learned what being handled meant. Trevor was arrested. Charged with arson, attempted murder, stalking, criminal trespass. But the timeline didn't match. Police picked him up at 4 a.m. at a motel outside the city. But the fire started at midnight. That left 4 hours. 4 hours where Trevor disappeared off every camera, every witness statement, every traceable record. 4 hours where Dante's people found him first. I didn't ask what happened in those 4 hours. Dante didn't volunteer. But Trevor looked different in his mugshot.
Pale. Hollow.
Eyes too wide, staring at something beyond the camera. Something that had broken him from the inside out.
Good.
The shop was gone. Structural damage too severe. Foundation compromised. The building would be torn down, rebuilt from scratch. I cried for an hour, sat on Dante's couch, and let it pour out. 3 years of work, a decade of dreams, my entire identity reduced to smoke and ash. Then I stopped, wiped my face, stood up. Dante walked into the living room carrying coffee, saw me, and set the cups down carefully. I'll rebuild it. I can't afford. I'm not asking you to. He sat across from me. Not close. Giving space. It's an investment. You're brilliant at what you do, Mercy. The city needs your work. The city has other watchmakers. Not like you.
Simple. Certain.
I've watched you bring dead movements back to life. I've seen you repair things other experts called unsalvageable. You don't just fix clocks. You understand time itself. Something cracked in my chest. Why?
He looked at me.
Really looked. And for the first time since I'd run 3 years ago, I saw past the masks and walls and careful control. Because I never stopped loving you. The air left the room. He stood, walked to the window, kept talking like confession was easier when he wasn't facing me. I know you left because I scared you. I know you think being with me means losing yourself, becoming something you're not. But I don't want to own you. I never did. I want to stand beside you, protect you, build something with you that's bigger than either of us alone. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dante, I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just telling you the truth. He braced his hands against the window frame. You can stay here as long as you need.
No expectations. No obligations.
When the shop's rebuilt, it's yours. Free and clear. Whether you want me in your life or not. I sat there, coffee going cold, mind racing. Trevor never asked what I wanted. He decided. Demanded.
Took.
Dante asked. Listened. Waited. Even now, offering me everything, he gave me space to refuse. I stood. Crossed the room. Stopped behind him. Turn around.
He did. Slowly.
Guarded. I kissed him. Hard. Desperate. 3 years of hunger compressed into contact. Hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him down, erasing distance. He froze for half a heartbeat, shock, hesitation, disbelief.
Then he caught me.
Hands in my hair, arm around my waist, kissing me back like I was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. We broke apart gasping. Foreheads pressed together. Hearts racing. Rebuild it, I whispered. But we rebuild it together. His smile was sunrise.
Deal.
6 months later, the shop reopened. New building. Reinforced walls. State-of-the-art security. Fire suppression system that could handle a goddamn inferno. And above the door, a new sign in brushed copper. Jones and cross timepieces. I handle the craft. He handles business. We handle each other. Trevor got 8 years.
No parole.
His lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, temporary insanity, whatever excuses rich, white men use when they try to murder their ex-girlfriends. The jury didn't buy it. Neither did I. The watch, the one I'd sold 3 years ago to escape, reappeared on my workbench one morning. Dante had tracked it down, bought it back, had it re-engraved. The inscription now read, "Always. Together." He gave it to me 6 months later. Different setting.
Small ceremony.
Just us and 2 witnesses. I wore a simple dress. He wore that same black suit from the gala, top button undone. We said our vows in the shop, surrounded by ticking clocks and the smell of oil and metal. And when he slipped that watch onto my wrist, vintage, restored, marked with promises we'd both keep, I finally understood. Time wasn't something you escaped. It was something you chose. I chose him. Every second, every heartbeat, every tick, forever. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you, you're the real one. We appreciate you sticking with us through every twist and turn. Did you forgive Dante? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, turn on notifications, and stick around, because at Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, the stories only get darker, juicier, and more unforgettable from here. From all of us here, happy holidays and season's greetings. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next story.